Hey everyone, welcome back to our channel Music and Logic, your go-to channel for a mix of music and coding. Whether you're here to learn Python or jam to some good tunes, you're in the right place. On this channel, we dive deep into programming while also exploring the world of music through shorts. So if that sounds like your kind of thing, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications to stay updated. So, in our previous video, we took a deep dive into functions in Python, covering everything from defining functions to using parameters and return values. We even wrapped it up with some exercises to test your understanding. If you haven't checked that video out yet, be sure to watch it before continuing. Today, we are going to build on that knowledge and explore some advanced concepts like default arguments, lambda functions, and how to work with arguments and keyword arguments. These are super useful features that can make your code more flexible and concise. So, grab your coffee and let's get started with functions part 2. Before we dive into today's topic, let's go over the exercises from our last video to make sure everything is crystal clear. I'll walk through each solution and explain the logic behind it. So let's get started. The first exercise asks us to create a function that takes a name and an optional greeting message. And if no greeting is provided, it should use hello by default. So, this function introduces the idea of default arguments. Here, the greeting parameter has a default value of hello. So, if we call the function by saying greet with the name Ram, it will automatically use hello as the greeting. However, if we want a different greeting like hi, we can say greet with the name Ram and the greeting hi, and the function will use that instead. This flexibility is handy when you want to provide a fallback value without always specifying one. In this exercise, we are asked to create a lambda function that takes a number and returns its square. So, a lambda function is like a mini function in one line. Look at the lambda function here. This means that it takes a single argument x and returns x squared. So, the print statement here returns 16 as the output. Lambda functions are great when you want a simple, quick function without needing to fully define it using the regular def keyword. Here, we are asked to create a lambda function that takes two numbers and returns their difference. This lambda function takes two arguments x and y and simply returns the result of x minus y. For example, if we call this function difference of 10 and 3, it will return 7. So lambda functions like this are helpful when you want a quick simple operation between two values. Now we are creating a function that uses args to accept any number of positional arguments and returns their product. With args, we can pass any number of arguments to this function. Inside this function, we start with result set to 1. Then we loop through each number in args and multiply it with result. So if we call product 2, 3, 4, it will return 24 because the multiplication of these numbers gives you the result 24. This function is flexible and works with as many numbers as you need. In this exercise, we are creating a function that uses kwargs to accept keyword arguments representing a person's details like name and age and prints them. Here, kwargs allows us to pass in any number of keyword arguments which get stored in a dictionary. Inside the function, we loop through each key value pair in kwargs and print them out. So calling print details would print name as Ram and age 30. This approach is great for functions that need to handle a flexible set of named parameters. For this final exercise, we are asked to create a lambda function that sorts a list of tuples by the second element in each tuple. This function uses the sorted function which lets us sort a list with a custom rule. Here we are using a lambda function as the key argument, telling sorted to look at the second element of each tuple. For example, if you pass the given values in the print statement to sort by second, it will return the values that is shown in the output. And that's it. Those were the solutions to the exercises from our last video. How did you do? I hope these explanations helped to clarify any questions you had. If you still have any doubts, drop them in the comments and I'll be happy to help. Practicing these concepts is the best way to reinforce what you have learned. Now let's jump into the today's topic. Now let's start with default arguments. This allows you to assign a default value to a parameter, which means if the caller doesn't provide an argument, your function will still work. For example, in this greet function, if you don't pass a name, it will say hello guest by default. This is handy when you want functions to run with minimal input or when a parameter is usually the same. So now try writing a function with default values yourself. What happens when you don't pass any values? Now experiment by calling it with different arguments. Now let's explore lambda functions, which are anonymous one-liners. They are used for quick operations where writing a full def function would be overkill. A lambda function looks like this in the above example, which doubles any number passed to it. You can also use lambdas with built-in functions like sort function to sort items based on a particular condition. Now write your own lambda function and try using it inside map function, filter function or sort function. It's a powerful tool for short functional tasks. Now let us look at the syntax and usage of lambda function. The syntax of the lambda function is straightforward. You can see above, lambdas are designed for simplicity. One expression, no need for written statements or complex logic. Take this lambda that multiplies two numbers, so it's concise and perfect for quick calculations where you don't need a full function. Try experimenting with different lambdas and see where you can fit them in your code for efficiency. Now let's look at the arguments for variable length arguments. Now let's discuss which allows a function to accept a variable number of positional arguments. This means you can pass as many values as you want and they'll be packed into a tuple. Now take this example. Whether you pass 2 or 10 numbers, the functions will add them all up. Now write a function using arguments and see how it simplifies handling multiple arguments. Coming to keyword arguments, lastly we have kwargs, which means keyword arguments, which allows for variable keyword arguments. This means you can pass named arguments and the function will handle them as a dictionary. For example, in this display user info function, you can pass any number of details about the user and the function will print them. Try creating your own function using kwargs, which are keyword arguments, and see how flexible it becomes when handling different keyword arguments. And now that brings us to the end of the today's lesson. We have covered a lot. Default arguments that allow you to simplify function calls with predefined values, and lambda functions, a great way to keep your code concise and efficient, and args and kwargs, two powerful tools to handle variable numbers of arguments, whether positional or keyword based. I encourage you to try out these concepts in your own projects. Experiment, break things and learn by doing. Remember, the more you practice, the more these concepts will become second nature. So, congratulations on making it through this video. Learning about functions, default arguments, lambdas and handling variable arguments is a huge step in mastering Python. But remember, simply watching tutorials isn't enough. You need to practice these concepts hands on. I challenge you to take what you have learned and apply it to the real world problems. Can you write a function that handles both required and optional arguments? Maybe a lambda function that filters a list. Play around and see what you can create. And don't forget, there is so much more to explore. In our next video, we'll dive into advanced topics. These concepts will take your Python skills to the next level. So, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss it. If you enjoyed this video or found it helpful, leave a comment and let me know what you're working on. Alright, before we wrap things up, I have got some exercises for you to test your understanding of functions and everything we have discussed today. These exercises will give you hands on practice with defining functions using args and kwargs and working with lambda functions. So, here are the exercise questions. Go ahead and give these a try. Don't worry if you find some of them tricky. That's totally normal when you are learning something new. Try to solve them on your own, and I'll go over the answers in the next video with detailed explanations. And here is a pro tip. Practicing these little exercises now will make you way more confident when writing larger programs later on. If you have any questions or get stuck, drop them in the comments and I'll help out. Make sure you have hit that subscribe button and the bell so you don't miss the answers in the next video. Happy coding! See you in the next video. Bye bye.